Hello and welcome to another episode of the Energy Connects podcast. I'm your host Chiranjib Sengupta, and this episode is part of the ongoing ADIPEC series on energy markets and geopolitics. The Middle East conflict has put the spotlight on accelerating energy security and diversification. As a recent ADIPEC white paper in this series highlights, energy security is no longer a localized concern, but the cornerstone of national sovereignty. For Gulf countries, this evolution is particularly acute. They occupy a central position in the global energy systems as both major producers and exporters of oil and gas, and as significant consumers who rely heavily on these resources to meet the rapidly growing domestic energy demand. In this context, energy security is not just defined by independence, but by the ability to ensure continuous, reliable, and stable energy flows that sustain both national stability and global markets. And in this era of energy addition and demand-led electricity expansion, the industry is grappling with a complex trilemma, balancing a lower carbon future with the urgent needs of energy security and affordability. To discuss a lot more on this topic, I'm delighted to welcome our guest for this episode, Jamie Webster, Senior Director at Boston Consulting Group's Center for Energy Impact. Among the many interesting facets, this recently recorded conversation yet again underscores why the need for a secure, stable, and resilient energy future has never been more important. Jamie, welcome to the Energy Connects podcast.
Happy to be here. It's an exciting time.
With all the volatility that's going on, how do you see the whole definition of energy security evolving?
So energy security was already evolving as of 2022 when effectively it reemerged. Before then, we had really been focused on sustainability, and 2022 with the February 24th invasion of Ukraine, suddenly the world rediscovered energy security. Europe especially rediscovered energy security. And we have been talking about it for several years. But now this is like a new wrinkle and a new way where it's reinvigorated us and realized energy security is not just a one-time sort of event. This is one that's going to stick with us for a lot longer, and it is hitting more countries. And it is something where it's much harder to put our arms around exactly how difficult this is going to hit the economy and hit different countries, both in energy, but also fertilizers, chemicals. The entire economy is going to get impacted by this. And so energy security really hits at the top of the pyramid. Energy is life, as Dr. Sultan said, and energy security is the thing that really underpins all of this.
I think that's an excellent point. And taking off from there, what Dr. Sultan also mentioned, he spoke about energy addition. And that's a narrative that's been around for a couple of years now. How do you see the conflict also impacting that narrative?
We know that energy addition is an important part of energy security. So energy security can be addressed in a number of different ways. You should have storage, you should have multiple places that you can get that energy. But one of the easiest ways is there's just a lot more energy that is out there. It is not terribly surprising to me that the world kind of recognized last year, and it's a little ironic in many ways, that last year the IEA came up and redid its scenarios and put out its new scenario. But a lot of other organizations also redid their scenarios. Our analysis indicates that the average energy scenario is now up for total energy expectations through 2050, up about 7%. And so while that doesn't mean that the world suddenly needs 7% more energy, it's that the expectations, the realization that we need more energy. And so we really need to bring that on more, because if you don't have enough, the way we solve it is through price. That's how we solve shortages, is through much higher prices, which causes energy poverty, which can cause unrest. And it just slows down GDP and slows down kind of thriving of societies.
And one of the key impacts of that, what are the lessons that the industry can take away?
I think the last lesson is very much resilience, is trying to make sure that you understand that pretty much any energy infrastructure is at risk now. There's been discussions about the need for more and more pipelines to be buried and to be hidden away a little bit more. There's a recognition that having storage, and not just local storage, but storage near the areas that it is needed, will be more important in the future. The ability of the IEA to pull together the governments in order to release the 400 million barrels, while it was great, it actually took a little bit more time than I and many people were kind of hoping. It underscores the importance of dialogue and the need for governments to be able to communicate with one another. And I think the energy industry, I'm always impressed by how the energy industry is very good at being able to have that dialogue. And I think it's important for governments to be able to do that as well. I'm impressed with how the GCC has pulled together in this time of crisis. And so dialogue uh, is another key aspect in terms of this resilience.
And it's a great point that you mentioned about the historic release, 400 million. Uh, However, various countries have adopted various strategies in the post sort of release phase, like the US. I think Secretary Wright mentioned the swaps. But how does it look like, and how do you see this stockpile then being replenished in the future?
So the US is doing a swaps partly because, of course, our SPR is much lower than it was a couple of years ago. And I think this administration is concerned that it will, reduce these stockpiles and then have to rebuy them at a very different sort of price. And so that swap was effectively to make sure that is brought back in. The Japanese, you're right, are asking for additional barrels to be released. We still have a number of barrels that can be released. The reality is, this is effectively a trying to stop a dam that is falling apart by putting up your hand. It is a small measure. It is helpful. The reality is we need the Strait of Hormuz to be opened up. And so the stocks are helpful, but the stocks were never designed to be able to mitigate a disruption of this scale. The stocks will, if we do not open the Strait of Hormuz, the stocks will be run out quite quickly. And then we're really in quite a bit of trouble.
Circling back to one of your earlier comments where you mentioned fertilizers, and so we are seeing, like, for example, helium fertilizers, everything is also impacted. So what about, while there's a lot of conversation around oil and gas, LNG, what about these ancillary sort of the byproducts?
So these are also really important. They're the top line ones are the ones that the news likes to talk about, and are the easiest ones that you can kind of see. But those secondary products are incredibly important. It's also the products that are kind of the feedstocks that are, not the products that nobody goes around to buy helium, I guess, unless you're having a children's birthday party. But it is those products that, like the gas that actually goes into your iPhone, the little gases that are needed in order to make chips, things that, people don't generally buy, but are the feedstock for the important things that keep our economy going. And so because it is part of a long supply chain, it will take a while for that to work its way through. And each of those supply chains is a different sort of length depending on, how long it takes to go through that supply chain, how much stocks are built up within those different aspects. And the other issue is that even though everybody is doing as much analysis as they can, the unknown sort of secondary, tertiary effects, I am extremely worried about, is the sort of aspects that, few or any of us have really necessarily gotten our arms around on, because of this one little particular ingredient that's impacting another little ingredient because of some other crisis that's also happening in various other parts of the world.
And finally, Jamie, do you see this also reshaping, like, global partnerships and collaborations, and governments also adopting new kind of strategies?
I think they're going to need to. I think one, I'm hoping that the GCC will probably come out of this much tighter. I suspect that there will be some new uh, government kind of multilateral groups kind of come together that will be dealing with very targeted sort of trade um, measures that they are trying to take care of. I think moving to a kind of global sort of multilateral sort of organizations, those will be very difficult at this time. I just don't see those obviously happening at this point. It's going to be, where you're moving to more of a balkanization of the world. We've got two major, kind of superpowers or two large countries, and the middle powers. Their best move is effectively to play in between them, and to create some organizations within those spots. The middle powers are, really need to kind of play a pretty smart game between these two giants.
Jamie, thank you so much for your excellent insights. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. That was Jamie Webster from Boston Consulting Group. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Energy Connects podcast. And you can go to energyconnects.com for our rolling coverage on the Middle East conflict. Don't forget to follow us on social media and subscribe to our newsletter for regular updates. A big thank you also to our amazing production team working behind the scenes to bring these episodes to life. Thank you, and I'll see you soon on the next episode of the Energy Connects podcast. Until then, goodbye.